In a small town nestled deep within a forest, there stood an old, abandoned hospital known as St. Jude's Asylum. It had been closed for decades after reports of strange occurrences and unexplained disappearances among the patients and staff. Locals whispered of restless spirits haunting its halls, their cries echoing through the night. One moonless night, a group of thrill-seeking teenagers decided to explore St. Jude's Asylum. Armed with cameras and flashlights, they ventured through the overgrown courtyard and pushed open the rusted gates. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence as they stepped into the decaying building. Inside, the corridors stretched endlessly, illuminated only by the faint glow of their flashlights. Dust-covered furniture and broken medical equipment littered the halls, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance in the dim light. Each room they entered held remnants of its dark past. A rusted operating table, tattered patient files, and faded photographs of solemn-faced doctors and nurses. As they delved deeper, a sense of unease settled over the group. Whispers brushed against their ears, though no one spoke. Footsteps echoed from unseen corners, and cold drafts sent shivers down their spines. Despite their growing fear, curiosity drove them forward. They reached the lower levels of the asylum, where the atmosphere grew even more sinister. The air became thick with a musty scent of decay, and strange symbols were etched into the walls, illuminated by their flickering flashlights. They stumbled upon a room sealed off from the rest, its door chained shut and marked with warnings in faded red paint. Against their better judgment, they broke the chains and entered. Inside, they found a small, dimly lit chamber with a solitary chair in the center. Dust motes danced in the beam of their flashlights as they approached cautiously. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread hung heavy in the room. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang. They turned in horror to find themselves trapped. Panic gripped them as they pounded on the door, their cries echoing through the empty halls. Shadows flickered on the walls, taking on grotesque forms that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Just as despair began to settle in, they noticed a faint glow emanating from beneath the chair. Trembling, they approached and discovered an old, weathered journal. Its pages were filled with frantic scribbles and sketches of twisted figures, accompanied by rambling accounts of experiments gone awry and tortured souls seeking vengeance. Before they could comprehend the journal's significance, a chilling wail filled the room, a sound that pierced their souls with unrelenting anguish. The walls shook, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. They huddled together in terror, paralyzed by fear as the wail intensified, surrounding them from all sides. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the wail ceased. The door swung open with a creak, and they fled from St. Jude's Asylum, their hearts pounding in their chests. They never returned, but the horrors they witnessed that night haunted their dreams for years to come. A reminder that some places hold secrets too terrifying to be unearthed, and that darkness lingers where the light cannot reach. As the group of teenagers fled from St. Jude's Asylum, their minds raced with the horrors they had witnessed. Each step echoed loudly in the silence of the night, their hearts still pounding from the ordeal they had narrowly escaped. They ran through the overgrown courtyard, tripping over roots and branches as they struggled to put distance between themselves and the accursed building. The moon hung high in the sky, casting eerie shadows that seemed to reach out to grab them. No one dared to speak until they reached the edge of the forest, where they finally collapsed onto the damp ground, gasping for breath. Their flashlights lay discarded, their batteries drained from the harrowing experience. Fear and relief mingled in their expressions as they exchanged nervous glances. What was that?" whispered Sarah, her voice trembling. "I don't know," replied Mark, his tone hushed. "But we shouldn't have gone in there. That place is cursed." Silence fell over them as they caught their breaths, the sounds of the forest night enveloping them, the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. Each noise seemed amplified, as if the asylum's influence still lingered, watching them from afar. Finally, Emily spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did anyone see that journal we found? What was written in it?" They exchanged uneasy glances before Mark nodded solemnly. "It was disturbing," Talk of experiments, tortured souls. It was like whoever wrote it was consumed by madness. Tom shivered, wrapping his arms around himself. We need to forget about that place. We should never have gone inside. They nodded in agreement, their faces pale in the moonlight. The events of the night had shaken them to their core, leaving an indelible mark on their souls. We should go home, suggested Sarah, her voice tinged with urgency. Forget this ever happened. Reluctantly, they gathered their wits and rose to their feet. With one last glance at the dark forest behind them, they began the long trek back to town, their minds replaying the terrifying moments they had experienced in St. Jude's Asylum. As they reached the outskirts of the village, a chill wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a faint echo of the wail they had heard inside the asylum. They quickened their pace, desperate to leave the darkness behind them. From that night on, the teenagers avoided speaking of their ordeal, burying the memories deep within their minds. Yet, they could never fully shake the feeling that something malevolent still lurked within the walls of St. Jude's Asylum. A reminder that some horrors are best left undisturbed, lest they awaken the darkness that dwells within us all. Months passed, but the events of that fateful night at St. Jude's Asylum continued to haunt the group of teenagers. They tried to resume their normal lives, burying themselves in schoolwork, sports, and social activities. Yet, despite their efforts to forget, the memories persisted like stubborn shadows in the corners of their minds. Mark, who had been the most reluctant to speak of their experience, found himself increasingly plagued by nightmares. In his dreams, he wandered the dark corridors of the asylum, pursued by ghostly figures whose anguished faces bore silent accusations. He would wake drenched in sweat, the echo of that chilling wail still ringing in his ears. Sarah, normally outgoing and cheerful, became withdrawn. She avoided dark places and refused to walk alone at night, fearing she would once again hear the whispers that had echoed through the asylum's halls. The sight of abandoned buildings or even old hospitals in movies sent shivers down her spine. Emily immersed herself in books, hoping to distract herself from the lingering unease. Yet, no matter how many pages she turned, she couldn't escape the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes followed her every move. She began to question her own sanity, wondering if what they had experienced had been real or merely a shared delusion. Tom, the most skeptical of the group, tried to rationalize their encounter. He researched the history of St. Jude's Asylum, hoping to find logical explanations for the eerie phenomena they had witnessed. But the more he delved into the archives and old newspaper clippings, the more unsettling truths he uncovered. Stories of unexplained deaths, rumors of experiments gone wrong, and the mysterious disappearances of patients and staff alike. One evening, as dusk settled over the town, the group gathered at Sarah's house for a rare reunion. The atmosphere was tense, unspoken fears lingering beneath the surface. They sat in Sarah's living room, surrounded by the comforting glow of lamplight, yet unable to shake the lingering chill that had settled in their hearts. "We need to talk about what happened," Emily finally spoke up, her voice wavering slightly. Mark nodded solemnly, his gaze fixed on the flickering flame of a candle on the coffee table. "We can't keep pretending everything's okay. That place, it's still with us." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, her eyes distant as she recalled the terror of that night. "I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. Every shadow feels like it's watching me." Tom sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe we should go back, confront whatever it is that's haunting us." The suggestion hung in the air, met with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. They exchanged hesitant glances, the weight of their shared experience binding them together in a way no ordinary friendship could. But before they could reach a decision, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, causing them to jump in surprise. The flames of the candle flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And then, faintly at first, they heard it. A distant, mournful wail echoing through the quiet night. The group froze, their eyes widening in terror as the sound grew louder, closer. It filled the room, enveloping them in its chilling embrace. The air grew cold, and a presence seemed to materialize in the corners of the room, unseen yet undeniably there. With a collective gasp, they scrambled to their feet, their hearts racing with fear. Without a word, they fled from Sarah's house, leaving behind the flickering candle and the unsettling echoes of that haunting wail. Outside, under the pale moonlight, they huddled together, panting for breath as they looked back at the darkened windows of Sarah's house. The night was still and silent once more, but the terror of what they had experienced lingered like a shadow over their souls. They knew then that St. Jude's Asylum would never release its hold on them, that its darkness had seeped into their lives and would continue to haunt their dreams until they confronted the truth buried within its walls. The group of teenagers stood huddled together outside Sarah's house, their breath misting in the chilly night air. The echoes of the wail they had heard inside Sarah's living room still reverberated in their minds, refusing to fade away like a lingering nightmare. "We have to go back," Emily said suddenly, her voice quivering but determined. "We can't keep running from this. We need to confront whatever is haunting us." Mark nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "She's right. We can't let fear control us forever. If there's any chance to put an end to this, we have to face it head-on." Tom hesitated, rubbing his arms to ward off the cold. But he knew deep down that they couldn't ignore the dark specter that had invaded their lives since that night at St. Jude's Asylum. "Okay," he finally said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let's make a plan. We need to be prepared." They spent the next few days gathering supplies: flashlights, batteries, ropes, and anything else they thought might be useful. They researched ancient rituals and protective charms, hoping to find something that could shield them from whatever malevolent force lurked within the asylum's walls. Finally, on a moonless night much like the one they had first ventured into St. Jude's Asylum, they returned to the abandoned hospital. The air was thick with tension as they approached, the overgrown courtyard silent and foreboding. They exchanged nervous glances, their hearts pounding in anticipation and dread. With Emily leading the way, they pushed open the creaking gates and stepped cautiously into the overgrown garden. The asylum loomed ahead, its darkened windows staring like empty eyes. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a faint echo of the wail that had haunted their dreams. They crossed the threshold, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. The corridors stretched before them, silent and still. Dust motes danced in the beams of their lights, casting eerie shadows that seemed to shift and sway with unseen movements. They retraced their steps, following the path they had taken months ago. Each room they entered held memories of their previous visit: the cold operating tables, the rusted medical instruments, the forgotten remnants of lives lost and broken. As they descended deeper into the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling stillness settled over them. They reached the hallway where they had found the chained door, its warning markings now faded with time. With a collective breath, they broke the chains and entered. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with a palpable sense of dread. The room was unchanged since their last visit. The solitary chair in the center, the dust-covered floor, and the faint echo of the wail that seemed to linger in the air. Without hesitation, they gathered in a circle around the chair, their hands clasped tightly together. Emily took out a small pouch containing protective talismans and began to recite the ancient words they had discovered in their research, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. As she spoke, the room seemed to vibrate with energy. The air crackled with unseen forces, and the shadows flickered as if in response. They closed their eyes, focusing their minds on banishing the darkness that had haunted them for so long. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. The temperature plummeted, and a low, guttural growl filled the air. Fear gripped them, but they held on to each other, their grip tightening with determination. Through the darkness, they felt a presence, a malevolent force that prowled the edges of their consciousness, testing their resolve. The wail echoed louder, desperate and anguished, as if pleading for release from its eternal torment. Emily continued to chant, her voice unwavering despite the terror that threatened to overwhelm them. The protective charms glowed faintly in the darkness, casting a dim light that pushed back the shadows inch by inch. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness receded. The wail faded into silence, and the oppressive cold dissipated. They opened their eyes to find themselves alone in the room, the asylum eerily quiet once more. They exchanged cautious glances, relief and disbelief mingling on their faces. Had they succeeded in banishing the malevolent force, or had it merely retreated into the depths of the asylum, biding its time? Without speaking, they knew they had faced their fears and emerged stronger together. As they made their way back through the corridors of St. Jude's Asylum, they felt a weight lift from their shoulders, a sense of closure settling over them like a comforting blanket. They left the asylum behind, its dark secrets buried once more beneath layers of dust and time. Though the memories of that night would linger, they knew they had confronted their demons and emerged victorious. A testament to the power of friendship, courage, and the indomitable spirit that resides within us all. As the group of teenagers emerged from St. Jude's Asylum, a profound sense of relief washed over them. The oppressive atmosphere that had weighed heavily upon their shoulders seemed to lift, replaced by a cool, gentle breeze that rustled through the trees surrounding the abandoned hospital. They walked in silence through the overgrown courtyard, their footsteps echoing softly against the damp ground. The moonlight filtered through the canopy of leaves above, casting dappled shadows on their faces. Each of them carried a mix of emotions: relief, disbelief, and a lingering apprehension about what they had just experienced. "It's over," Sarah finally whispered, breaking the silence that had settled over them. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was a hint of determination in her tone. Mark nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Yeah, whatever was in there, I think we've put it to rest." Tom remained thoughtful, his brow furrowed as he processed the events of the night. "Do you think it's really gone? Or just dormant?" Emily looked around at her friends, her eyes reflecting the moonlight with a mixture of gratitude and lingering concern. "I don't know," she admitted softly, "but I do know that we faced our fears together, and that counts for something." They continued their journey back to town, the weight of their shared experience binding them together in a way that words could not fully express. Despite the late hour, they found solace in the presence of each other, a silent understanding that they had confronted something beyond the realm of normalcy. In the days that followed, the group found themselves gradually returning to their routines, though the memories of St. Jude's Asylum remained etched in their minds. They spoke less of the horrors they had witnessed, choosing instead to focus on rebuilding their sense of normalcy. Yet, each of them carried a newfound respect for the unknown and a deeper appreciation for the bonds of friendship that had guided them through the darkness. They knew that St. Jude's Asylum would forever be a part of their personal histories, a tale of courage and resilience passed down among them. As the years passed, they grew older and pursued their own paths in life, college, careers, families. But they never forgot the lessons they had learned on that fateful night, nor the unbreakable bond forged in the face of fear. Occasionally, they would gather together, reminiscing about their youthful adventures and sharing quiet nods of understanding. And though they had all moved on, a part of them would always remain connected by the eerie whispers of St. Jude's Asylum, a reminder of the enduring power of friendship and the courage to confront the darkness that lurks within us all. Years passed, and the events at St. Jude's Asylum faded into distant memories for the group of friends. They went their separate ways, carving out lives filled with new adventures, successes, and challenges. Yet, despite the passage of time, the bond they had formed during that harrowing experience remained unbreakable. Mark pursued a career in architecture, channeling his determination and resilience into designing structures that brought beauty and functionality to communities. His colleagues admired his steadfast approach, unaware of the quiet courage he had displayed in the face of supernatural terror. Sarah became a psychologist, drawn to understanding the complexities of the human mind. She excelled in helping others confront their fears and traumas, drawing on her own experiences to offer empathy and guidance. Deep down, she knew that her journey through St. Jude's Asylum had shaped her understanding of fear and resilience. Emily followed her passion for literature and storytelling, becoming a successful novelist known for weaving tales that captivated readers with their depth and emotional resonance. Her characters often faced their own inner demons, drawing inspiration from the courage she and her friends had shown in confronting the malevolent force within the asylum. Tom found solace in nature and adventure, becoming an environmental scientist dedicated to preserving the natural world. He often ventured into remote landscapes, where the echoes of their shared ordeal served as a reminder of the fragile balance between humanity and the unknown. Despite their diverse paths, they stayed in touch, gathering periodically to reminisce about their youth and the night they had faced the darkness together. Each reunion brought a sense of nostalgia tinged with gratitude for the bonds that had withstood the test of time. One autumn evening, a decade after their encounter with St. Jude's Asylum, they found themselves gathered around a crackling bonfire at a remote cabin nestled in the mountains. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and the promise of winter's approach. They laughed and shared stories, their voices blending with the rustling of leaves and the crackling of flames. As the night wore on, their conversation turned to memories of their youth and the events that had shaped their lives. The topic of St. Jude's Asylum arose naturally, drawing them into a reflective silence as they recounted their journey through the abandoned hospital's haunted halls. "Do you ever wonder what really happened in there?" Emily mused, her gaze distant as she stared into the flickering flames. "I mean, did we really banish whatever was haunting that place?" Sarah shook her head slowly, her expression thoughtful. "I'm not sure we'll ever have all the answers. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved." Mark leaned forward, his eyes meeting theirs with a mixture of seriousness and nostalgia. "But one thing's for certain, we faced our fears that night. We confronted something beyond our understanding, and we did it together." Tom nodded in agreement, his gaze drifting up to the star-studded sky above. "And we've carried that courage with us ever since. It's a part of who we are." They fell silent, the crackling of the fire filling the space between them. In that moment, they felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey they had shared, a journey that had tested their courage, strengthened their bonds, and shaped the people they had become. As the embers burned low and the night deepened around them, they exchanged knowing smiles, their hearts filled with a quiet reassurance that some experiences transcend time and distance. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger for it, a testament to the enduring power of friendship and the resilience of the human spirit. And as they bid farewell to another unforgettable night beneath the stars, they knew that the echoes of St. Jude's Asylum would always linger in their memories. A reminder of the night they confronted the unknown and found the strength to shine light into the darkest corners of their hearts.